Alright, today I'm going to be showing you my tic-tac-toe game that I've created in Erlang. To start off, we'll enter our Erlang shell, and then we'll compile this main program. Then I'll start the tic-tac-toe program by calling the start function, and then the game will begin. We're first prompted to select between playing single or multiplayer game. I'll start off with a multiplayer game first to show you how that works. So now we can see our game board as well as our key, and the console will prompt us to select a number to indicate which grid space we'd like to go in. So I'll start by putting a 0 to go there. Then the next player will have a turn. Let's just say they go in that spot. And then these two players can play against each other. Until we see here that X wins diagonally in this way. If you want to play again, you can just call the start function again. And then the game restarts. This time I'll show you a single player game where you can play against a computer I made. You always have the first move, so I'll just go in that spot. And as you can see, the computer is gone in this grid space. If I go in 4, I should be blocked by the computer. And if I go in 7, the computer should go for the win, as it does. So now a little bit about how the code works. We see up here our start function, where it'll define a list of symbols, which is just spaces, which is what will be printed down here onto the game board later. We're then welcomed, and it takes an input from the user to decide whether or not they want a single or a multiplayer game. And then I use this case of block of code to switch between single and multiplayer game mode. They're pretty similar. I just have two different loops set up for the single player or the multiplayer option. Um, and yeah, if they enter anything else, they'll just say invalid input, and they'll have to restart the function. Right here, we'll see the multiplayer loop and how that works. The first thing it does is it'll toggle between X and O characters. That way you can take turns without having to manually toggle anything. That's what this block of code will do. And then right here, we'll get the position that the user wants to go and place a symbol in using this get input function, which is just another IO read function. And then it'll do some other stuff to verify that the spot they input is available and it's not outside of the grid space. So I'll show you how that works real quick. A single player game. So if I first go in spot 0 and then try to go in spot 0 again, it'll say invalid position, please try again. And so now I'll go in a spot that's actually available, like 2, and it'll work just fine. You can also type in stop at any time to just end the game. So that's what the get input function does. After it's gotten the input, it uses this case of block of code to either stop the game if the user types stop, or to continue the game based off the input that was received. And what it does is it'll just update the symbols list using this function. Then it'll draw the board with that updated symbols list. And then down here, the game will end automatically if a win condition has been met. And I'll show you these two functions real quick. This update symbols list works recursively. If the position they've chosen is 0, that means it's the first spot in the list. So it'll just put the new character in that first spot of the list, and it'll just disregard whatever was there before. But if they didn't want that first index position, then it'll go to this function using pattern matching, and it'll just recursively go through the list until it finds that index position of the spot that you wanted to go in. That's basically how that works. And then the win condition met works with pattern matching. It'll first just see if the X is 1. These are all the different patterns. That means X is 1, Then it'll see if O has 1 using those same principles, and then it'll make sure there's at least one spot available on the board, and if none of that happens, then it'll just return a cats game. And this just returns an atom of an X, an O, no, or a cat based on what it's found. And that's what's later used up here to decide what to display to the user. Then the single player loop works the same way, except for in this case, if it's an X, it means it's the user's turn. But if it's an O, this is another case of block of code, by the way. And so if it's an O, then it's the computer's turn. And this is how that works. It's pretty similar to how the user's turn works, except for instead of updating the symbols list based off of the user decision, it'll update it based off the computer's decision. And I'll show you that function. So this function works by utilizing case of blocks of code again. And it'll first check to see if there's a spot that it can go to win the game. And if that fails, then it'll check to see if there's a spot that it can go to block the user from winning. And if that fails, then it'll just go into the next available spot. And if at any point those are successful, then it'll just return the position, which is what's happening down here. And these helper functions right here works with some pattern matching, as well as another case of block of code. So if there's ever an empty spot, then it'll test to see if it can go into that spot and win the game. And I use that by utilizing some of these previous functions we've gone over, like the win condition met and the update symbols list. And if all that checks out, then it'll just return the position of where the computer would like to go. But if that doesn't work, then it'll recurse down here through the list. So we'll see, we'll just disregard whatever that first item in the list was, and we'll increase the position by 1. And then it'll just recurse through until it finds a spot that it wants to go. And if all that fails, then it needs to just pick the next available spot. A similar function down here, just again recursively goes through using pattern matching to find the next blank spot in the board. And I think that's pretty much everything for how this program works. So thanks for watching.